Wonderful. Thank you for joining the 24th Triple ID conversation already. We will be recording, but Zoom is set up in a way that it will not record the names of the attendants. We organize these Triple ID conversations usually on the one of the Thursdays every month. It seems to be fairly flexible. It depends a bit who's available and who would like to speak. We start with a 25-minute presentation or something like that, and then we have a discussion session after that. And we stop exactly at the hour in 56 minutes now. I'll very briefly introduce Nina Hansopaheluwakan Edward. She's an associate professor in design at the University of Sydney in Australia. Before that, Nina worked at the University of Leeds, universities in Indonesia and in Australia, and at the University of Canberra. She studied in Indonesia and the UK and did her PhD in Australia at Monash University, an absolutely global person. She currently serves as the editor-in-chief of Information Design Journal, and Rob Waller is very pleased to see here as the founding editor, and I've did an editorial shift of about 6 years in the early 2000s. So I really look forward to this presentation. Nina, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me for the Triple ID conversation today. It's lovely to meet everyone, especially Carol, Rob, and David. Pleasure to meet you, and Veronica as well. I'm Nina Hansopaheluwakan Edward, Editor-in-Chief of the Information Design Journal, or IDJ, and someone who's deeply invested in how we shape and share information to make it more effective, inclusive, and impactful. And today I'd like to introduce you to IDJ, what we do, why it matters, and how you can engage with the journal as a reader, researcher, or contributor. And in this talk, I'll be covering 3 different topics. I'll start off with a little bit about IDJ, the editorial direction, and as well as the impact on research and practice. So start off, IDJ is a peer-reviewed international journal that has been around since 1979, published by John Benjamins, that is based in Amsterdam. So this is a journal that sits at the intersection of communication design, usability, linguistics, psychology, and technology. Our mission is clear: to improve how information is communicated so that it works better for more people in more contexts. What sets us apart is our dual commitment to research and practice. So we publish rigorous academic studies, design case reports, and reflective practice papers. We're especially proud of work that bridges theory with application, where real-world problems are tackled with critical design thinking. Now, let's look at what we cover and how it translates into real projects. So I'll be using some recent examples from the latest volumes. First is visual and typographic design. So in volume 29, first issue last year, Odekirk and Bayer investigated the impact of script style fonts on letter recognition. Their findings show that while decorative typefaces may add character, they often undermine legibility, especially in branding and product design. So this reinforces the value of empirical research in guiding visual decisions. We also have information visualization. So we have seen this come through in multiple articles. So I'm just gonna cover 2 different examples for today's talk. From the first issue last year, we have Sellers' analysis of biodiversity maps that revealed how design conventions like color choices, symbolic abstraction, and static layouts can distort ecological understanding and downplay interdependency in natural systems. And from the second issue last year, a study on COVID-19 dashboards showed how layout and interactivity directly influence public interpretation of complex data under pressure. We can see from one illustration that is featured in this slide the reading behaviors for WHO dashboard that has impact and influence the user interpretation of the interface design, how they interpret risks. Next up, we have user experience and usability. A fascinating study in the second issue entitled When Multiple Roadmap Design Are Used by the Same Bus Company Cause Usability Testing and Implications. So this study examined 24 different bus route maps produced by a single Japanese transit company. This study found inconsistent layouts, orientation errors, and confusing symbols, making the case for design standards in public transport. We can see that the inconsistency in design was so stark that even local users struggle to make sense of routes. This work has direct implications for public communication, accessibility, and service design. We also, looking at the Visualizing Biodiversity on Maps study, an article, also flagged that digital ecological maps often lack interactivity or detail layers, limiting usability for both experts and the public. Another area that we cover is cross-cultural and multilingual communication from some of the articles, the recent articles that we published in IDJ. That same transit study also highlighted gaps in multilingual support. Some maps including Korean or English, others didn't. So these leave international travelers confused, leading to accessibility gaps for non-Japanese speakers. And these design oversight have real-world consequences. As you can see here in one of the picture, you can see there's like one English word, route map on top left, but then you can see the rest of the text are actually written in Japanese. So you can imagine if we have international travelers who don't speak Japanese, it can be very challenging for them to see and find their way. So a very good case study. We also cover digital and interactive media. So across both issues last year, we have explored the tension between functionality and user engagement in digital platforms. For example, many biodiversity maps lack interactive features that could enhance comprehension and transparency. There's growing urgency in using digital tools, not just to display data, but to support understanding. Similarly, the COVID-19 dashboard case study revealed how well-designed dashboards support fast comprehension in high-stakes contexts. Next, we also cover area of wayfinding and spatial communication. So spatial design emerged in both transit and ecological mapping studies. For instance, the urban tree maps in the first issue simplified ecosystem into identical dots, obscuring rich information about age, species, or ecological function. Design choices here shape what gets seen and what gets lost. So I think it's really important to look at these details. For example, here, the graphic tools on the right side, looking at the shape, size, color, hue, texture, and orientation. That is very crucial to showcase what is it that we're trying to communicate in a map. So again, a very good case study. Last but not least, we also cover health and safety communication. So taking one article as an example here, the second issue that is featured the development of DRIPS health questionnaire, that is the Dutch Reduced Illustrated Prostate Symptom Score. They call it DRIPS. So this is a redesigned prostate symptom form that is made accessible for low literacy patients. Design was grounded in iterative user testing and resulted in improved comprehension and more reliable responses. The result is a simpler, more visual form that helps patients provide more accurate information. Again, a very good example of design improving health outcomes. This is actually one of the articles that was co-written by one of our editors in IDJ. Now let's move on to the editorial direction and opportunities. So as editor-in-chief, I can share that our current focus is on interdisciplinary and socially responsive work. We actively encourage submissions in 3 main formats. First is the research articles, theory-driven with a strong methodological grounding. We also invite submission of case studies, focus on real-world applications and evaluations. We also invite and very welcome on practice-based papers. So this could be reflections of or from design practitioners working in the field. And we are particularly interested in work dealing with health communication, environmental design, inclusive design methods, and the ethical implications of AI and automation in design. And for IDJ, we use a double-blind peer review process, and we welcome contributions from both academics and professionals, as well as students. Then moving on to the impact on research and practice. So the work that we publish goes beyond the page. So by looking at the examples that I briefly shared. So first we have the DRIPS form. So this study is influencing clinical practice by improving how patient forms are designed and used. Then we also have the COVID dashboard research that is helping to define principles for risk visualizations in public health. We also have the biodiversity map critique to inform how conservation data is communicated to both policymakers and the public. And we have the roadmap analysis that has practical implications for any transport authority serving multilingual populations, which is very helpful and very effective in today's communication. And this is what we mean by design research with impact. Of course, this is non-exhaustive list. So if you are thinking of proposing something that is more theoretical grounded, or you are proposing some framework or a new model based on the existing literature, please feel free to reach out, and we're happy to review your work as well. And in the future time, looking ahead, we see strong momentum in several areas. So first could be the AI-assisted and automated design, how to maintain clarity and accountability in machine-generated content. I think this is a big thing that we encounter anywhere in the world, and is very, very hard for us to disregard this AI thing, because it's just so big. Almost everyone is using them for work, for study. And from my personal view, because I have background in design, in visual communication design, I can see that probably in next 10, 20 years, we no longer use graphic designer. So I think this is a very good way for us to evaluate how we maintain the clarity and accountability in this machine-generated content. Do we need AI to interfere with our work, whether it's assisting us or whether it actually get rid of, some professions. We also look at climate and ecological communication, especially now that, we have a very major concerns in global warming, for example. So this is to ensure urgent ecological data is not just shown, but understood by people, especially if the data visualizations or information design is highly contextual and very complex. We also look at participatory and inclusive design. As highlighted in one of the articles about meta-analysis on information design for vulnerable populations that was included in the first issue last year. So I co-authored this article. So we're looking at how to communicate with vulnerable populations, how to make sure that they are, like, the communication is inclusive for them. I think this is also something that we are particularly interested in having more articles in. We also look at design ethics, particularly on critical cartography and ethics, understanding the power dynamics embedded in maps, data, or even design choices. Again, these are not passing trends, but they are reshaping the field of information design itself, especially now that we have different technologies, different trends, different just different ways of communicating, really. So again, these emerging trends can change anytime, but this is that we are looking at these several areas for now. And in closing, the Information Design Journal is a platform for people who care about clarity, accessibility, and the impact of design. As editor-in-chief, I invite you to read, engage with, and contribute to the journal. Whether you are a researcher, educator, or practitioner, your work and your voice belongs in this conversation. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Nina. Really enjoyed it. A very clear presentation about the Information Design Journal. As a past editor, I wish we had started as clear as you did. Rob, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I was hugely encouraged by your presentation, Nina. Thank you very much. I think the journal's in really good hands, that you're thinking of it in a strategic way and reflecting on what its role is. I would actually probably just suggest, I've been on the editorial board since I sort of handed over the journal many years ago, but we don't actually get an awful lot of contact, and it would be really nice to have some some direct communication to the editorial board. Because I think we can promote you as well, promote IDJ, and just be aware of, what your thinking is. So now I was very excited by some of the things you were saying as well. I mean, actually, and alarmed as everyone else at the impending doom for the graphic design profession. Although, actually, just one comment to make on that is that, I mean, when I started in the 70s as a designer, you didn't typeset yourself. Your job was to specify to someone else. Your skill was in thinking strategically about the design and the user and so on, and the look of the thing. But then you had to instruct someone else to do it. And now with AI, I think we're back to the same situation where AI is best treated as your assistant, as your your junior. You tell it what to do. And so in the future, we're going to be prompting AI to do our layouts, rather like we used to prompt a typesetter lay it out before. And of course, just as the typesetter used to have their own ideas, so does AI. But I mean, for example, I've been exploring a really exciting thing. I can't draw very well, but I've been trying to explore using comic strips to explain things. And now you can just do your really crude sketch and ask ChatGPT to draw it in a comic strip style, and it will do it. And it's really remarkably good. And so if it's this good now, it makes mistakes, but it's going to get better. So actually just extending my, giving me extra tools. So I've got a pencil and I've got a computer, and now I've got AI to help me do some things as well. I'm quite excited by that. Rather, I'm quite glad I'm not starting out my career as a graphic designer.
Thanks so much, Rob. Really appreciate that. I mean, it's my pleasure to be here, actually. Thanks for Carol to introducing these triple ID. I didn't had idea of these conversation existing. I mean, like, coming from visual communication, information design is very specific, and I can see that some concerns, because personally, like, I work in academia in the university. I think we can pass on saying that, oh, I wouldn't worry about like being designer, because I work at the university. But then how about our graduates? What about our students? And looking at how AI is progressing is just insane. For example, if we do online talk like this, or even online interview, we can have our AI prompting like a real life responses. So say that you're asking me a question, I can see some text, and I can use those texts to respond to you. I mean, how about the originality of ideas? How can we communicate as people to people, person to person anymore? How about our communication? What's the, what do you call it? What's the genuinity of our conversation? I think that is what missing in my opinion. But then looking at, I think if we want to move aside, okay, don't worry about AI. I think that's really impossible right now, especially if we don't want to cover, okay, we don't want to publish anything related to AI. It's nearly impossible. But as Rob said, I totally agree, like the typesetting, especially now digital time, we don't like print copies as much as we did like 20, 30 years ago. All magazines now moving on to like electronic magazines. Like the way that we read text is also different. So I think that is another thing that comes into my mind, looking at like how we approach communication is no longer the same. But I totally agree, Rob, and I would very delightful to maintain ongoing conversation and collaboration with IDJ. My pleasure. Veronica?
Yes, fine, Nina. Thank you for your talk. It's really good to reconnect IDJ to Triple ID. It's been a long-standing connection over many years. And I was wondering if you progress to, you're talking about a change in how we read, how we communicate. Do you think that will impact on the way IDJ is published? It's still very traditional in its format. Should that change in order to reach a different readership?
Yeah, so we have several inputs and comments coming from some authors, especially now, like IDJ is actually based on subscription. So in terms of access, it's not as accessible as probably other journals. And in terms of the physical copies, we don't really print it as much as we did before. I'm pretty sure, I mean, like, this is my personal view again, but I'm pretty sure like many readers would look this at as changes as well. You know, I know some people, they prefer reading papers, like physical papers, instead of looking at screens all the time. But I think this is something that we need to communicate further with the publisher. But I'm pretty sure we are looking at different approaches of communication right now. We are moving towards that, Veronica, that's for sure. Rob?
Yeah, one of the things that frustrated me right at the beginning and really all the way through is that IDJ doesn't really reach practical designers as much as we hoped it would, partly because they don't subscribe to things necessarily, or they don't realize it's there, or the research is relevant to them. And also the format of an academic paper isn't that attractive a read to many designers. The next talk in this series actually is about another journal, which is the Legal Design Journal. And Michael Doherty is editing it. And it's a really interesting format because it's online and the case studies are presented in a much more designerly way. So if you're a practical designer, you can go to the case studies and see something that's really designed and worded in a way that appeals to you as a practical person and focuses on, and because it's not printed, there's no restriction for color printing or the number of images or the size of images that you normally get with printing. So I don't know, it won't be the time of day that suits you in Sydney next time, but perhaps watch the recordings. I think it's rather interesting to look at. As I say, it's something that designers have said to me, "Oh, IDJ, that's academic, or that's research," and not really for me. And it's always saddened me actually, because mistakes continue to be made. People carry on uninformed by research.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we have to maintain a standard. I think it's quite challenging for us to, have double standards. Let's say, okay, if you're academic, this is your standard. Like if you are from practitioner, you have like a different standard. Especially when
I don't mean standard, I mean genre. I just mean the way we articulate what we're saying, the way we present it.
Yeah, of course. I can see like some authors, they come from a practitioner, but also they co-author with academics. So that give them advantage to publish with IDJ. But yeah, I think this is something that we might need to look at. For example, maybe instead of research papers, for case studies, or even for what do you call it? Like for, if you want to have like an opinion or a view, then maybe you can have like a different format instead of like, using the more academic format, research papers. So we can definitely look at that.
That's something medical journals do. Medical journals often, and in fact, Will Stout-Timmins here can talk about the BMJ, and there's stuff there for busy doctors to catch up with, with the news, but there's also serious articles.
Yeah, right.
David Dickinson?
Just picking up on that exchange, actually, that looking at coming, as it were, from the other end of the telescope, there's a magazine that is very, very print heavy, called I, which some people will be familiar with, which I first picked up at an IDA conference, actually, and have been a loyal subscriber ever since. Lots of typography in there, but also quite an intellectually driven publication. And I wonder if there might be room for a corner of one page that they might be interested in academic highlight, or IDJ highlights, because there is this odd, I've been involved in research projects with universities as well as being industry, that we are in an odd hybrid sort of trade, if you like. Half it's and I'm proud to be publishing as well as doing commercial work. But yeah, so anyway, that's a possibility. Look at EYE. Nina, if you like, and if you're not, I can send you the details.
I
Yeah.
certainly know John Walters, who edits it, and perhaps we could get a conversation going.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Again, when I said like 3 different formats, it's not like very limiting of submissions. So if you have any ideas of you or you want to propose any other formats, please feel free to reach out, David.
Good.
Also have book reviews, by the way, in addition to like research paper, case studies, or even practice-based papers.
This would be helpful. Yes. I'm just curious about the relation between AI developments and what you mentioned about vulnerable or excluded societies. One of the characteristics of AI is that it excludes anybody over 65 and anybody under 18 because they don't write text. And any large language model is based upon the analysis of existing text, and there is nothing over, people over 85 don't write.
I thought you said 65, Carol. I'm still right. I'm over 65. Just...
Sorry about that. Very rarely, but you don't write about vulnerable topics in the sense of your health, your finances, your legal situation, things like that, where people under 65 tend to write professionally about those topics. I'm really struggling there because asking AI will give you opinions and hallucinate about these topics, and I think we've got major blind spots in working with AI that we ignore, that we can't see because we don't know what we're asking. And I'm afraid that academic publishing needs a system to make sure that it doesn't publish AI generated content that cannot be checked. What's your view? How do you cover yourself, basically, or how do you cover IDJ that it doesn't happen?
That's a very good question, actually. I'm not sure if I can answer this like from the AI view, because like we for example, like AI, when you say like older people, they tend not to engage with AI, probably perhaps because they don't write as eloquent as like the younger generations. But like AI now, I think you can use like the voice recognition to type. So if that's the case, then you can still engage with AI. But in terms of looking at say that AI generated content and using that to publish, I think this is something that we may not be able to catch everyone, because again, we don't want to play police here, but at the same time, it's more like ethical thing to do or to have. I know from colleagues that we know some people, they publish using AI generated content and it published. It go through like the peer review, it goes through like editorial check and review as well. So although that is concerning, I think we are in the same position like all other journalists, having the same struggle to that as well, Carol. Yeah. And this is not something that is really easy to handle and address. We just hope that like our authors or our reviewers have like a good eye to recognize and to, you know, to be able to present their work ethically in a way. So that's the way that we approach it for now.
Great, thanks. Now, sorry,
David?
David's last. Yeah,
Yes.
go ahead.
Do I have, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Oh,
Thank you.
good. I come at a lot of these issues from a different perspective. The principal concern that I have is with people who have to use information, whether it's medical information or work-related information, and the issue of the comprehensibility of that material, the usability of that material is front and center in our work. So that when we come to issues of method and techniques, they're always in the framework of, well, what do we want people to be able to do with this information? And importantly, at what level? Okay, the level is very important to us because Carol knows this very well. I know David Dickinson does as well, and I know Veronica does. You talk to a client and you say, how well do you want this to perform? And exactly what do you want people to do with this information? So that we work on the basis of agreed, if you like, metrics or standards. You know, for example, if you look at the guide to plain English, the standard in plain English, it talks about people being able to find what they're looking for and to use it appropriately. That's great. We agree with that entirely and have been using that as a motif in a lot of the work we do and as a driver for the work we do. But we insist on actually measuring that. And we're all committed to doing good work, but are we committed to doing work which achieves a particular usability standard? And I'm not suggesting that there is a universal standard out there, there isn't, but there are specific standards we can apply. If you're dealing in the field of medicine, again, David Dickinson would know about this, and Carol van der Waard would. If people can't find the information they're looking for, then the information fails, okay? And a lot of the work we do is concerned with getting things to a particular standard. So I think we have to move, actually, from my point of view, into a different realm in which we say, yes, we're doing good work, isn't this interesting? And we got people to do this rather than this, and so on. But to what level, to what standard, what is acceptable for public use documents? And I don't think we're pursuing that as a journal as vigorously as we should. It's very nice to read, you know, projects that are successful in changing the way people use things, but we need to see that in terms which make sense to other people, to outsiders, so that they can actually see that information design is delivering something very important. Now, I mean, I know I've pushed this at almost every paper I've done, and you know, I'm quite used to having big silences after I publish things, but I still persist because that, from our institute's point of view, is the core of what we do. We take on projects, many of them extremely challenging, which are very much revolve around the idea of people being able not only to use the information, but that we can demonstrate empirically that they can in fact use that. And on top of that, we also notice, and I mentioned this in my paper that wasn't, I think, a very good paper, but one of the things we do is we track, we monitor work we've done over weeks, over months, over years. And we find that almost everything we do, which starts up at a high standard, slowly drops and drops. And for example, we have works that go up to the 80–90%, but they then drop back to the conventional norm, which is around about 40%. Now, if you don't measure it, you don't know it's happening. And we've gone back to organizations and said, well, we worked on this 5 years ago. Let's do exactly the same tests as we did on the assumption that, you know, we're working on a level playing field empirically. And inevitably, we come across deterioration. Now, I don't see enough of our preoccupation with that. And I think that is very important, because otherwise what we produce, even if it's very good to begin with, I think there is a danger that we're simply adding another piece of ephemeral, unusable information into the world. Anyway, I've said what I want to say. I would like us to have much more emphasis on that very pragmatic and practical application of our work, particularly in areas like medicine, okay, which is one of the ones that we did a lot of work on. And we've actually written standards on that, which, albeit they're followed in a somewhat fudged way, but as Carol knows very well, I mean, the fudging that goes on in testing of material is appalling. It's almost derisory, really. Well, if we don't pull them out of the quagmire they're in, nobody else is doing that with sufficient authority and sufficient development. So that's, anyway, I've said enough.
Thanks, David. At the moment, there are calls for reactions for the FDA food labeling. The FDA wants to put different things on front of the food packaging in the US. In Canada, they have got the same problem or the same issue they're dealing with. In Europe, at the moment, the regulations for the medicines are revised and considered. The template, the horrible template that we use, the European Medicines Agency has asked for comments there. I write myself silly doing it, and I waste my life providing evidence based upon the Information Design Journal partly that is available to say that the approach that they use is not based upon actions and not based on information design principles. We need to get people to listen to us, and we need to present it in a way that they can understand. And at the moment, basically, I've failed. I spent most of my life writing this stuff, and it's not going to be very effective. But at some point, somebody needs to listen. Rob, can you?
Yeah, Rob.
Yeah, I was sort of slightly going back to AI, but linking it to what David was saying as well. One of the problems with information design is you usually get an opportunity to produce one document for the whole population, particularly with medicines, where it's in the pack, and it's going to be the same pack for everyone. AI, I did a lot of work in legal information design, where it's very common now for AI to draw up your business contract at one end of the deal, and for AI to interpret the contract at the other end of the deal. So my AI is talking to your AI, you know. So you tell AI what the terms of the contract are. It generates some legalese, and at the other end, it interprets it and dumps the same bullet points on the desk for the other person. Now, society suffers from poor literacy. So we found when we've tested documents, it's very, very hard to get over 80%, 85%, because 15% of the population is at below level 1, you know, with the PIAC study, and struggles with any written information. AI, I've been exploring this in my own life. For example, we leased a car, and all this gobbledygook came through, and I just asked AI. what it meant for me. So at the end of this 3-year deal, we're supposed to give, there's all sort of things happen. And I said, so how should we treat the car, if we're going to sort of fulfill our side of the contract? He gave me 4 bullet points. It's very, very easy, very simple. I've done this with other things as well, with warranties. You just stick the warranty into AI and say, what are my risks here? And how are they covered? And it'll explain it to you. So AI is not just a tool for the threat to design is not just that it does the design for us, but it actually replaces the document itself at the other end, for the reader, becomes an interpreter. And I think that's an amazing thing. And in fact, most, Google searches now gives you an AI summary at the beginning of everything it's found. Now, I know we all know about hallucinations and all the rest of it, but it's pretty damn good. It's really not bad. And given that this is sort of year 1 of that, in a few years' time, if they can sort out the ethical side and the accuracy and so on, it's going to be an amazing reader's support. And that's the threat to information designers, from my point of view, is that people are going to say, well, we don't need you guys. We'll give them the same old stuff, almost give them the original Act of Parliament and the regulations, and it can tell them, knowing their situation, their age, their educational level, their situation, what it means for them. End of rant.
Nia, would you like to react?
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard to respond in terms of how fast the AI has gone through. Because I think the first time that AI was around was just quite recently, but now we see so many advancements around AI, so many things that we can do. Even they have humanized AI just to, so that people cannot see whether it's AI generated content or not. They try to humanize it somehow.
Yeah.
And to that end, I think whether we need AI or not, what level, education level, I think it depends. It really depends on the person itself. For example, we can have someone who just tried, okay, what is AI? What this thing can do? But then try to engage with it over and over again to many different levels of work, then you can see. But then nowadays, so many different AI agents, so many different layers, different features, different things that I can do really. So if we want to steer clear out of AI, we can. We want to keep the conventional or traditional, the more traditional approach of communication, say, or we write things from scratch through reading and writing. But nowadays, I think it's more relevant, it's more intuitive for the younger generations to use AI because they are digital generations, really. They're born with mobile phone, the smartphone in their hands. And AI is just one application in their mobile phone. It's so handy. It's so easy. But then what is easy, right? Easy means you don't even think with your brain. You just, okay, just put any prompt. I'll see, okay, it makes sense. And then you just submit. But then, what is your argument? What is your voice on that? That is the AI generated content or voice. It's not even yours.
No. I just,
Oh,
do
sorry.
you know this one? It's a book by David Skopak, who is a professor at I wouldn't say the Royal, but it's the main German art school in Berlin. And this book was completely written by AI, and it is completely about information design. The only disadvantage of the book is that it is in German, but it is a very, very good review of what information design is and what information design could be about. It was written last year, and but we really need to review it in IDJ, I think. Somebody needs to have the courage to pick it up and review it. Veronica? Muted. Sorry.
Thinking about one of the strategic directions, the inclusion and designing for marginalized groups, I think that gets even more important in the light of all the AI developments. Because on the one hand, they're not represented sufficiently for AI to generate relevant content. And on the other hand, they may not have access to using AI the way the rest of the population has. So I think that's a really good strategic direction that you're taking.
Thank you, Veronica.
Can I quickly ask Veronica, at the summer school, which we run every year, we always get a question which I find embarrassing, which is about people with visual impairment, because we talk about layout and diagramming and visualization. And if you don't have visual ability, if it doesn't work for you, a lot of information design sort of goes out the window. But I've noticed that I think there's a tool in Safari now which will kind of interpret instead of you producing alternative text for every image, it does it for you, or the person with visual impairment, if they've got this switched on, presumably gets a description of the image and possibly even the layout. It could even interpret the order in which it should read the screen to you, distinguishing between stuff that's just sort of furniture like menus and the actual message. So it seems to me that the AI for the visually impaired person could be very liberating, and also sort of liberating for the designer who doesn't really know how to create a layout that works for everybody, that's inclusive.
Yes,
those features are those features are built into all the Microsoft software. So if you generate something in Word, it will read it out online and that kind of thing. So I recently worked on a used car safety rating booklet that rates all of the used cars that are out on the road there and tells you just how safe they are. And we produced this thing and it went to New South Wales, and the New South Wales government rejected it because it didn't meet their accessibility guidelines, because it needed to be read out online to people with vision impairment that might be thinking about buying a car. So it was a bit of a strange one. We did it anyway, but it was very perplexing.
I just cancelled my holiday to Australia. It's too dangerous. People with visual impairment driving cars might not be.
Yeah. Maybe the Tesla will do it for you. Anyway.
I think the combination of the 4 points of the impacts of information design journal, the ethics, the inclusivity, the climate, and the ecological issues, and actually what David mentioned, the evidence, the data, does it really work? Can we be sure about that? And if it doesn't work, which areas doesn't it work, and where does it fail? Those 4 areas you mentioned are absolutely fantastic to develop those further. I think we had similar ideas early 2000. I'm sure Rob has similar ideas in the early 80s. But we're making steps forward, and I think that's a very good, positive thing. Will, can I ask you what BMJ's view on this would be? Are they worrying about it, or are they dealing with it, or what's the issue?
I mean, yeah, I'm not the right person to talk to about it, I guess. Certainly in terms of how we structure information and present it visually, I know that we're sort of, trying to build things using tools that make that information more accessible to screen readers and AI, that kind of thing, rather than making kind of flat images. We're trying to put data and make graphs out of information rather than out of pixels, as it were. That's kind of the direction of travel for the graphics we're doing. But the overall, in terms of the publishing, I mean, it's a big organization, and I try not to worry about that too much.
Wonderful. Thanks
Other
so much.
people are definitely worrying about it quite a lot. There's a lot of consideration about it, and kind of, you know, how we've got, you know, obviously we've been updating our policies to see what happens in terms of AI and publishing a lot recently. You might be unsurprised to hear.
Is it available from BMJ or is it internal?
I believe that there are new guidelines that we've published quite recently that are available, which I'm happy to share. On Rob's point about IDJ and I suppose the way the BMJ approaches being a kind of trade magazine as well as an academic journal, it's interesting. I don't know very many other journals that do that. I guess some of the bigger ones, Nature, have similar kind of things as well in science, because they kind of, you know, have a very broad reach. I suppose the broader your reach is, the more different bits of that kind of pie you can eat into. But yeah, I mean, the research is kind of where we started, but it's kind of equally, we do sort of journalism stuff and kind of educational content, I suppose, which is more kind of geared at a practitioner. I'm just working on one at the moment that's a big algorithm about people with a thunderclap headache and how what that might mean and what test you need to do and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of very practical information that could be used at the point and making a big image about that. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing to think of for IDJ. Should there be more kind of types of content in there as well as kind of the academic research? Is there other things that are, and like this discussion about AI has been so useful to me personally about kind of, I hadn't thought about that we're going back to instructing someone else, being kind of more of a transformer than being a kind of practitioner with AI. And actually, you know, we have to maybe look further back if that's the case, and to see kind of how the profession was in those days. So yeah, some of that kind of discussion I think would be really useful for people to hear. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Tim. Thanks very much. We've reached the hour. I've got to close this conversation, unfortunately. Many thanks to Nina. I really enjoyed the presentation. Many thanks, and giving me the confidence that Information Design Journal will continue in a very strategic and very nice way. I'm very positive about that. The recording of this conversation will be on the IIID website soon. The next IIID conversation, as Rob mentioned earlier on, will be on May the 29th. Michael Doherty will talk about legal information design and legal design journals. And in between, on May the 8th, something interesting will happen is that there will be the IIID Studio, which is a global project involving universities in Brazil, USA, Canada, and Greece. They will present their work to experts and get feedback in a conversation and in presentation. And I think the work that I've seen till now really warrants more attention, and that will be on May the 8th. So I hope to see you there. Thanks very much, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.